War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Lisa Batchelor. This evening we are honoured to acknowledge the Right Honourable Grant Shapps, MP, Secretary of State for Defence for the United Kingdom, and the Right Honourable Richard Marles, MP, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence, accompanied by General Angus Campbell, Chief of the Defence Force, and Mr Greg Moriarty, Secretary of the Department of Defence, and the accompanying delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Service Clubs Association, and we welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. Now, if you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you wish to and you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Stuart John Charles George Wooldridge. Stuart Wooldridge was born on the 10th of January 1887 in the small community of Stone Hut, South Australia. He was one of 7 children born to John Wooldridge, a sawyer, and his wife, Elizabeth Amelia. Stuart received his education at Stone Hut Public School, where he was a keen student. At the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, he was working as a labourer. Stuart Wooldridge enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 30th of March 1916 in Adelaide. He was assigned to the 3rd Reinforcements of the 48th Battalion with the rank of private and embarked for active service from Adelaide in July of that year, sailing on board the troopship Siang B. Private Wooldridge arrived in Plymouth, England in early September of 1916, before travelling to the Western Front in November. He joined the rest of his unit in the front lines on the 5th of December 1916, just in time for the onset of a bitterly cold winter. The start of the new year was marked by the enemy's strategic withdrawal to the fortified Hindenburg Line. Allied units eagerly followed the German retreat, believing the war was perhaps finally drawing to a close. It was not long, however, until their withdrawal halted at the enemy's new front, near the French village of Bullecourt. Here, the Allies planned to mount an attack to break through German lines and capture the village. Wooldridge's unit attacked on the morning of the 11th of April 1917, under cover from tanks rather than artillery. As the men jumped over the parapet, the tanks quickly proved ineffective, and the attacking infantry were left exposed to intense enemy fire. One of Wooldridge's comrades described the attack in a letter home. "I tell you, it was hell let loose that day. Our guns opened fire at 4 a.m, and the air seemed to be on fire with the shells screeching over us. Of course, Fritz took a tumble that we were going to attack and opened fire in return, and it was awful. When we hopped out, the machine guns and rifles tore into us. Men were dropping all round, and when the officers saw the state of things, they ordered us to drop down. And what was left of us dropped into the shell holes and kept low. My mate had a bullet right through his ribs, and another poor fellow who made an attempt to get back to the trenches was shot dead. Soon forced to retreat, Allied units suffered more than 3,000 casualties in one day. The battalion's commanding officer noted in the unit's war diary, "Had the tanks shown more pluck and initiative, I believe things might have been quite different. No words of mine can express the pride and admiration I feel for these brave men." Among the thousands of dead was Private Stuart Wooldridge. One of his mates, Private Wilson, described the last time he saw Wooldridge. "I saw him lying in a trench at Bullecourt, badly wounded. He was hit about the stomach with a piece of shell and was unconscious when I saw him. Soon after this, the Germans counterattacked and we were forced to retire, and we left him there. According to his condition when I saw him, I do not think there was any possible chance of saving him, even if he were taken prisoner." Wooldridge's remains were eventually recovered after the battle and reburied at Tilloy British Cemetery in France. His family later paid tribute to him with a poem placed in the Express and Telegraph newspaper. It read, "We pictured your safe return, dear Stuart. We longed for the clasp of your hand. But God has postponed our meeting. We will meet in a better land." Private Stuart Wooldridge was 30 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Stuart John Charles George Wooldridge, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We'll leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub of Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. Wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.